Please welcome to the stage the President of the Conservative National Convention and your conference chairman, Michael Winstanley.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Birmingham and welcome to the Conservative Party Conference 2024. It's great to see so many of you here today. It is a great honour and privilege to be the President of the National Conservative Convention and Chairman of the Party Conference. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the Brighton bombing at the Conservative Party Conference. And I think that it's right that we take a moment to remember all those who were murdered and injured by that cowardly terrorist attack. The response to this threat to democracy by Mrs Thatcher was, the conference must go on. When she addressed party conference on that Friday afternoon, it was as robust and defiant as we would expect. And I wanted to quote directly from Mrs. Thatcher's speech that afternoon. This was an attack on democracy, not only to disrupt and terminate the Conservative Party conference, but also an attempt to cripple Her Majesty's democratically elected government. That is the scale of the outrage in which we have all shared, and the fact that we are gathered here now, shocked but composed and determined, is a sign not only that this attempt has failed, but all attempts to destroy democracy by terrorism will fail. And that statement is as true today as it was 40 years ago. And we must never cower nor surrender to terrorism in whatever form it appears. It was Mrs. Thatcher's inspirational leadership that led me to join the Conservative Party 4 years later. And in 1989, I attended my first ever Conservative Party conference at Blackpool. Little did I realise when I was stood at the back of the Winter Gardens that 35 years later I would be stood on the stage chairing party conference. Those were the days when we had conferences at the seaside, and I hope that at some point in the future we can return to those seaside resorts. In 1989, we had a Prime Minister that was respected on the world stage and provided the vision and leadership that transformed this country from the sick man of Europe into an outward-looking country ready to lead on the world stage. Mrs. Thatcher transformed this country both at home and abroad. She took on the union bully boys, faced down Scargill, reduced inflation, cut taxes, unleashed opportunity for hard-working men and women across the country, and gave people the opportunity to own their own homes, many for the first time ever. The Conservative Party has always been on the side of the working class, unlike those charlatans and frauds in the Labour Party who hate freedom of the individual and want to deny people choice. Well, a leopard never changes its spots, and they are no different in government today than they were previously. But let's be charitable to the Prime Minister. He's had a lot on his plate since he took over in July. The first thing you need in a new job is a few new suits and clothes. Then he needed some new glasses, and he had to sort out some passes. Then you've got to have some time off, so you need to go to the match. More passes on the field, more glasses in the hospitality box. Then he had to give a pay rise to his mate, Sue Gray, along with his comrades in the trade union movement who bankrolled the Labour Party. At the same time, he was letting criminals out of jail early and scrapping the Rwanda plan. He then chose to attack some of the most vulnerable members in society with his heartless plan to withdraw the winter fuel allowance from our pensioners. And of course, when you move into a new home, you need to change some of the decor. So the portrait of Mrs. Thatcher had to be moved. How petty. It is quite pathetic that the Prime Minister is intimidated by a portrait of that great lady. Well, it's not surprising he's intimidated by having such a great statesman looking down upon him over this useless, shambolic, hypocritical socialist government that he leads. We know it's two-tier Kia. We need to make sure it's one-term Kia. Whilst many things have changed since my first party conference, I'm particularly pleased to see a return to member debates. I would like to thank the party chairman for leading the charge on this, and it's heartening to see more members registering to attend conference. It is right that you will have the opportunity to let your views be known and debate the national and international issues of the day. I hope that you've registered to take part in these debates and have your say. We all get involved in the party because we are interested in politics, and yet, when we attend association meetings, we spend all our time talking about how much to charge for a cream tea. Should we sell raffle tickets by the strip or individually? So, over the next few days, let's see the debate flow and let's harness these ideas as we start to rebuild our party for the next general election. As we rebuild following the general election, I wanted to pay tribute to all our members who worked so hard, not just in the general election itself, but in all the elections that we've faced in the last few years. I also wanted to acknowledge all those who stood as candidates who weren't successful and who lost through no fault of their own. I know we've lost some tremendous members of Parliament, councillors, police and crime commissioners and elected mayors over the last few years. But we cannot wallow in defeat and self-pity. Our country needs us to provide an effective opposition to the Labour Party. However, we must understand the reasons for our defeat and why we lost the confidence of the British people. We must rebuild around those conservative values and principles that have served us so well previously and rescued this country in the past. The values of low taxation, freedom of the individual, freedom of speech, reduction in immigration, secure borders, strong defence of the realm, a strong union, smaller state, and the ability to be a free trading nation outside the shackles of the European Union. As well as member debates, this conference provides a real opportunity for our 4 remaining leadership candidates to lay out their vision and aspirations, not only for the party, but more importantly, the country. As members, you will have ample opportunity over the next few days to listen, ask questions, and engage with the leadership candidates. And I would urge you all to make the most of this unique opportunity that this conference provides. Once we've elected our new party leader in November, then we need all to unite behind them and give them our full support as we start the fight back. We also have many meetings that will be taking place on the fringe of conference. Take the opportunity to network, catch up with old friends, make new friends and contacts. Please visit the trade stalls and support them by giving them some business. And of course, enjoy the many receptions, as I know you all will. Birmingham is a great city, so please also spend time enjoying the amenities and supporting the local economy. When we leave conference, we need to be refreshed, renewed, and ready for the fight ahead. Once we have elected our new leader in November, we need to get behind them and give them our 100% support. We cannot afford any more division and infighting. The country needs us, and we will have the fight of our lives over the next few years to take on this self-serving, hypocritical, sanctimonious Labour Party. We are the only party that can save Britain, so let's ensure that we get out there and win the battle of ideas and provide a clear Conservative vision of hope for the future. And if we do that, then we can win the next election, and you can say, I was there in Birmingham when the fight back began. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy conference.
Please welcome to the stage, Andy Street.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for that lovely welcome. Now, my job is very simple today. It is, of course, to welcome you to Birmingham. My home, the centre of the West Midlands region, and, of course, the heartbeat of this country. So, on behalf of every Brummie, whatever their politics, you are indeed very welcome here. It's a long tradition of political discourse in this city, and it's great that once again the Conservative Party brings its debate here. In truth, we love hosting events like this. It's important to us. We're good at it. Nearly half of the big conferences and exhibitions across the country are here. And I'd even say we love showing off a bit. Maybe you think of Brummies as self-deprecating people, but maybe we're just becoming a bit more confident. And certainly, I love showing off how all those cranes on the skyline that I spoke about in my first conference speech back in 2016 are indeed shaping a new city. And we love having guests here because, from me, most people who come here say something when they're leaving like, you know what, it was better than I expected. Or they say it'll be great when it's finished. We've been saying that for 100 years, of course. But as a proud Brummie, I can say that. I hope you find that and be warned. Anyone who disparages us in the next few days, you will face our full wrath. Now, of course, I so wish that the context to today was different. I dearly wanted to speak to you as the West Midlands Mayor, not the former Mayor of the West Midlands. And I wanted to show you how moderate conservatism was still a winning force. Sadly, that was not to be. But even though I lost back in May, I do believe there is still so much we can learn from such a narrow defeat, which of course outperformed the national outcome. First of all, take heart, ladies and gentlemen. There's no debate that conservatism is still really strong here. Indeed, when I lost, some of the papers described this as the fall of a Tory stronghold. It was some news to me, I will admit, because perhaps the more surprising thing is that we won in the first place, and that the youngest, most diverse, most urban place in Britain had a Conservative mayor for 7 years. But it did, and whatever else is done, I'm very proud of that. And beyond the mayoralty, there's other real strength here. The West Midlands is the only place in the country to have flagship Conservative metropolitan councils in Dudley, in Walsall and Solihull. And in Birmingham itself, Britain's second city, the Conservative course remains competitive. So be sure there is clear evidence that there is the support here on the ground for the national fight back to begin here in the West Midlands. But more important is to ask, why was it that conservatism has been and still is relatively strong here? And the answer is really very simple. We got on and delivered for local people. We made their lives better. Let's just have a look. On housing, we are the only region in the country to have achieved our housing targets, and indeed our affordable housing. We doubled house building, taking a lot of money from the private sector, but just a little bit from the national government to make it happen, whilst protecting our green belt. On jobs and training, we delivered 100,000 new jobs since the pandemic, concentrating on the new industries, all built on a leap forward in terms of qualifications across the region. On regional transport, we saw a tenfold increase in our investment across trams, buses, trains, cycles, everything. And we kept the lowest public transport fares in the country, and we fought for the things that really mattered to this region, like, dare I say it, HS2. And on tech, some people agree with that. Yeah, that's right. And on tech, the crucial sector of the future, we really got behind it. Fastest growing tech sector in the country, the best 5G coverage, and pioneering our digital boot camps. And we faced into some really tough stuff. We were at the forefront of net zero through our WM 2041 plan, not to prove some woke credentials, but to seize the economic opportunity that net zero provides. And the toughest stuff of all, homelessness, it was this region that was right at the forefront of championing housing first, reducing our homelessness on the streets. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was all about practical delivery for this region, and all underpinned by what I would call a partnership approach to politics. Partnership with government to bring in over £10 billion of new investment. Partnership with business. Look at foreign businesses investing in this region. Numbers from last year, the West Midlands easily the best, Birmingham the best regional city ever in terms of bringing in investment from around the world. Partnership with all communities, and yes, if necessary, partnership across the political divide, because our public were very clear. They wanted us to work together for the big wins like the Commonwealth Games. So that's the story, ladies and gentlemen, of what we did and why. And it's a story, as in Teesside, which shows why devolution is so important. It delivers on the ground, and for our party, now in opposition, it can be a proof point of effective delivery. So, let's then turn to the future of our party, and especially a little message for those bidding this week to lead this party. I would suggest there are 5 simple lessons from the West Midlands story. First, be confident. We can win in modern urban Britain. The proof is there. Second, self-evidently, delivery is key. Third, unity is key. Yes, in the party we hear lots about that, but also unity of purpose, and most importantly, unity, not division, across society. Fourth, winning does mean purpose, planning, practicality. It's not about culture wars. It's not about harking back. It is decidedly about looking forward. And fifth, and most important of all, values are essential. I know it's those values that saw me through that night when I lost, and the electorate wants to see values from their leaders. Truthfully, they're not overly interested in philosophy, but they are sharply attuned to character, morality, and beliefs. And above all else, they crave authenticity in their leaders. So, in conclusion, you've come to the perfect place to reflect with humility, to think about what service really means, and to plan our reset. And I, for one, am delighted that once again, my city can be at the heart of our great debate. Thank you for coming, enjoy the week, and most importantly, enjoy Birmingham.
Please welcome to the stage the Chairman of the Conservative Party, Richard Fuller.
Never has the Conservative Party suffered a general election defeat on the scale of July this year. If you do not feel wounded, disoriented, or profoundly disappointed, or yes, feel angry, then you would be a rarity amongst party members. We meet over the coming days in Birmingham to assess the scale of that defeat, to review the reasons that led to it, and to win back our efforts, to win back the trust of the British people. And winning back that trust will need the commitment of all of us, Conservative Party members, the Parliamentary Party, our activists, and every fellow citizen who cares about our country and shares our Conservative values. Since my appointment as party chairman, I've been talking to members of the party, to our association officers, councillors, general election candidates, and people both inside and outside the party. I've personally been reading through the thousands of emails that members like you have sent to me. And guess what? It turns out that listening to party members is really informative. and enlightening. Who'd have guessed? Your countless conversations with voters over multiple elections and your unrivaled grassroots experience are an invaluable resource. Coupled with your deep love for our party, your pride in what the Conservative Party has achieved, and your faith in what it can achieve, your insights and recommendations for change give us a blueprint for how we can get back on track. Now, I'm going to carry on reading your emails, but some common themes are already clear. A leading theme is the performance of our parliamentary party following the election victory in 2019. You told us, as the voters have told us, that the parliamentary party was divided, that we appeared self-serving and self-indulgent. You told us, as the voters have told us, that our policies too frequently lacked grip on the issues at hand and that we had lost sight of the Conservative values that should have been our guide, and that the absence of clear sight to our principles encouraged factionalism across the parliamentary party, hampering any leader's focus on competent delivery on the priorities that had drawn so many people to vote Conservative. I was a member of that parliamentary party. I am accountable for these assessments of our performance. I am profoundly sorry to you, the members of the Conservative Party. And I'm sorry to our current and former councillors, police and crime commissioners and mayors who found that their strong local records of service were drowned out by negative national headlines. And I'm sorry to Conservative voters and to the country at large for the consequence. A reckless, ideological, socialist government foisted upon the country with a huge majority based on a paltry share of the electorate. For all of that, I am deeply sorry. But what we now need to do is to learn from those difficult days and draw inspiration and insights on how we rebuild. To start, let's hear some of the thoughts from some of our general election candidates. Shazna Muzammil was our Conservative candidate for right here, the seat of Birmingham Ladywood. Now, we last won Birmingham Ladywood in 1935. It's a seat we might call challenging, but Shazna showed how our Conservative message of opportunity can reach all parts of the United Kingdom. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Shazna Muzammil, our general election candidate for Birmingham Ladywood.
Hello, conference. Welcome to Birmingham Ladywood, where I stood as a parliamentary candidate only just a few months ago. This constituency of Birmingham Ladywood has a rich history. Its first MP was the future Conservative Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. But since the Second World War, it's been considered a safe Labour seat. This year, though, Labour's majority shrank by over 40%. Residents went independent. The idea of a safe Labour seat is over. So how did I come here to stand as a Conservative candidate? My name is Shazna Muzammil, and I was born and raised amidst a brutal civil war in Sri Lanka. I saw many friends and members of my family lose their lives. As a girl, my education and aspirations were never considered. My 4 brothers had opportunities that I longed for. Instead, I was married off at a very young age, and before I knew it, I was a young mother of 2 amazing young boys. Yet, Sri Lankan society was also giving me the tools that would set me free. Because the ideas of self-reliance and independence were instilled in me at an early age. I knew that if I wanted to change my life and that of others, I had to look to myself. So I fought for my divorce and I went back to school. I got my MBA from Cardiff and began working in villages promoting girls' education. And for that contribution, I was recently awarded with an international award. I also met my wonderful husband, David, a British veteran who served in the Parachute Regiment. We loved our life in Sri Lanka, and I loved my work. I led large and diverse teams. I served as a board director with the Women's Chamber of Industry and Commerce. But when Dave's dad fell ill, it was time for us to come home. At first, I couldn't find a job. So I took on an entry-level role, taking calls from students at the Open University. It could have killed my confidence, but it sharpened my resolve. I've never been afraid of hard work, and I was determined to work my way up the ladder. And conference, this is what I did. Why am I sharing all this with you? Because the values that made me, self-reliance, hard work, opportunity, the freedom to choose your own path, these are conservative values, our values. And this party, the Conservative Party, gave me a chance to stand, to serve, and to make people's lives better. Because that's what conservatives do. And today, I stand here as a Conservative group leader on the council. Standing for Ladywood has been an incredible privilege. I'm a campaigner at heart. All I wanted was to knock on doors, speak to residents, and find out how they wanted their MP to serve them better. I learned a lot from them. They shared their time and even their meals with me. They understand that a better future is not just something that they can hope for, but that it is something that we can achieve together. I also learned that Labour had let them down. This amazing, vibrant, and colorful city should be Labour's pride and joy. Yet, they have a bankrupt council, high levels of deprivation, and the highest knife crime in the country. Labour's Birmingham gives us an early warning into Labour's Britain. But we must not lose hope. Any politician who looks at Labour's landslide and says it's broad and deep, well, they need their donor to buy them some stronger glasses. Their win was incredibly shallow in some places, even in its heartland, traditional heartlands. We need to totally rethink what are paper seats in areas where Labour's voters collapsed. And in Labour's victory this year, we will be able to see victory in 5 years. But before that, in 2025, we have local council elections. And 2026, we have elections for every council seat in Birmingham. That will require all of us to play our part. Small acts that make a big difference. So let's put our resources, time, and effort behind our fantastic Conservative group leader, Bobby Alden, and his team. It's time to get Conservative councillors onto Birmingham City Council and other councils across the country. Let's prove that our Conservative values can help win our voters back. Let's give them something to believe in, and let's focus on winning the next general election. And for that, our work starts now. Have a wonderful conference.
Thank you, Shazna, for that inspiring story. Of course, being involved in politics, being effective in politics, means being part of a team. This last election certainly called on that team spirit, and there were many positive stories of teamwork. I want to introduce to you two candidates who created a strong bond during their campaign. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Paul Athens, who stood in Hazel Grove, and Denny Bauman, our candidate for Liverpool Garston.
Good afternoon, conference, and thank you, Richard, for giving us the opportunity to speak today. We are Paul and Daniel, and we have the privilege to stand in Hazel Grove and Liverpool Garston, respectively, at the election in July. On paper, these are two very different seats. One that's been competitive for the Conservatives for decades, and one that we haven't held since the 1970s. We all want to win the next general election and avoid a decade in opposition. And we think there are lessons to be learned from our experiences that we'd like to share with you. I stood in Hazel Grove, which we won in 8 of the last 14 elections. This year, for the first time in the history of the seat, we came in 3rd, behind Labour and the Liberal Democrats. We lost, I lost, for many reasons. On the doorstep, I learned how toxic the Conservative brand had become in recent years, and how deeply people wanted change. Some of our voters went to other parties, but many simply stayed at home. We certainly didn't lose for lack of trying. And I'm here today not to wax lyrical about why we lost, but to tell you what I learned about how we can campaign more effectively next time and win. I was selected as the Conservative candidate a year before the election. I left the regular army after 12 years' service and threw myself into the campaign with the support of an amazing local association. When the election was called, I thought volunteers would flock from neighbouring safe seats. But this election was different, because everyone else was in their own fight for survival. So we understandably had little external support, with one notable exception: Daniel. And I can't imagine how much more difficult the campaign would have been without his tireless dedication to helping me and being part of our team. The motto of the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst is serve to lead. Officer cadets are told over and over again that it is in the service of others that we become leaders. And my good friend Daniel here is a leader. He sacrificed his time and talents to try and help me win in Hazel Grove, in the knowledge that his own seat could not be won. Our party's success over the generations, and however we feel right now, we have to remember that we are all members of the most successful political party in the modern world, has been built on the same campaigning principles. Ruthless and effective campaign strategy focused on securing the best results, underscored by a relentless determination from our members and volunteers to support those who are best placed to win. Although we lost in Hazel Grove this time, the campaign we ran, with Daniel's help, will stand us in good stead for the next general election. And as Daniel's told me, he gained invaluable experience that will make him a more formidable campaigner in future elections. We need to do everything possible to ensure this generational continuity in campaigning, to make certain that we are a credible and effective fighting force in every election we contest. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to us, and more importantly, for coming here to think deeply about the future of the Conservative Party. We all understand the threat that 10 years of Labour government would pose to this great United Kingdom. It is not enough to hope that they will lose. We need to equip ourselves to win. The fight back starts now. We need to re-establish ourselves as competent, responsible, and trustworthy stewards of government. We deserve, the whole country deserves, honest leadership. We'll spend a lot of time over the next few days discussing the future leader of the party and, we all hope, the next Prime Minister. But we also need to think about how we select and train future leaders at the local level and how that should fold into our wider campaigning strategy. And with that, I'll hand over to Daniel.
Thanks, Paul. Being selected in a seat like Liverpool Garston, you know what the outcome is likely to be. We were never expected to win this seat at this election. But if we are going to see a Conservative revival in seats like Liverpool Garston, it's vital we put in a showing at the big set-piece elections to show that we are committed to every community. It will be at the local level that we start to turn these seats around, in local government elections, building the foundations of success. But we need to use the opportunity of the big elections to put our brand front and centre. It would have been great to spend more time speaking to voters in Liverpool, campaigning on the ground, and making the case for Conservative values to those who haven't voted for us in decades. But that wasn't where we were at this election. We needed to focus our efforts where they could have the greatest impact. And I was more than happy to give my support to my good friend Paul and his campaign. It is vital that in every election that we focus our energy and our resources where they can make the biggest difference. Unfortunately, I think across the country, we saw too little of that team spirit in 2024, with the party fractured into local silos and campaign resources spread thinly. We must regain that team spirit that has made the Conservatives one of the most successful political parties in history. We are one Conservative family, and by working together, we will win again. It is our responsibility as members, candidates, and professional staff to make sure we are serving a greater cause, willing to give our time and our talents to support others, even if it costs us locally. A commitment to shared values and a willingness to serve our party wherever we are called will be vital to getting back into government. And it will ultimately be to our benefit as well. Learning campaign tactics, understanding the importance of campaign organisation, and being partnered with a seat with better resources than that of Liverpool Garston was both eye-opening and a privilege. Having the opportunity to be part of Paul's campaign gave me the vital skills and experience that I know will make me a better campaigner in the future. And I hope my efforts contributed to the best possible outcome in Hazel Grove. We look forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail, wherever we are sent, when we kick Labour out of office at the next election and beat back the Liberal Democrats. Thank you, Conference.
Thank you, Paul and Danny. Paul, a former Army officer, Danny, an advocate for mental health awareness. Two colleagues with very, very different backgrounds who showed the value of working together as part of a united team. It's a message for the parliamentary party. The parliamentary party needs to learn, and it has to change. And we will change. In Parliament, the Conservatives are the only effective opposition to Sir Keir Starmer's band of feather my own nest and look after my own mate style of government. Need a flat? Not just any flat, a penthouse. Need some designer clothes? A mini break in New York? Haven't got time to go to Specsavers? No worries, Lord Ali will sort it. A bunch of freebie-loving, union-beholden, pensioner-loathing socialists. How disappointing. How disappointing for the public to see them fall so far, so fast from their pedestal. And the public will only be able to rely on Conservative MPs to hold Labour to account in Parliament. The Liberal Democrats have already said they want to cosy up to Labour whenever they can. And on issues such as net zero, on tax and spend, on identity politics, the Liberal Democrats have crafted positions out far to the left of even the Labour Party. And what of reform? Well, we gave them oxygen. We gave them space. We will take both back. A changed parliamentary party, united in purpose, with a new leader in place and our Conservative values at the centre of our approach. Now, our party headquarters, CCHQ, needs to change as well. See, I thought you might applaud that bit. But let me tell you this. Since becoming chairman, I have seen firsthand the committed and talented individuals who comprise our professional staff across the country. CCHQ does make mistakes, but too often and too frequently, our professional staff have been unfairly blamed for decisions made by others. But there is a need for change. Indeed, CCHQ is changing. In recent weeks, we have undertaken a difficult but necessary restructuring program. We have lost many professionals, some with many decades of experience. And I want to take a moment to thank them for their service to our party. But the need for change in our party started earlier than 2019, and that need for change goes wider than the parliamentary party. That is why I have called for a more comprehensive post-election review than in the past. The review will be empowered to make recommendations for reform in all aspects of our party, and will then oversee the implementation of those recommendations with real accountability on the party leadership to deliver. The review must equip the party to fight and win elections at all levels. It must modernise our campaigning. It must provide the training needed to upskill our activists. It must expand the voice of members in policymaking. It must enhance the rights of party members to choose their candidate at an election. In short, the review must revitalise our party and get it back to being the election-winning machine it once was. And this review must be led primarily by members of the voluntary party and not by members of Parliament. I have asked Lord Patrick McLaughlin and the outgoing chairman of the National Convention, Lord Peter Booth, to chair this review. They will be joined in this effort by a panel of fellow Conservatives. Danielle Dunfield-Prayero, our candidate in Wimbledon, Councillor Heather Williams, the Conservative group leader on South Cambridgeshire Council, Anne Connell, the East of Scotland Voluntary Party convener, Matt Vickers, the MP for Stockton South, Virginia Crosby, the former MP for Innis Mon, Mefus Ahmed from London Area Conservatives, Lizzie Hacking of Next Gen Conservatives, and our new National Convention Chairman, Julian Ellicott. The terms of reference for this review are published today, and I have asked the panel to present their draft recommendations to our new leader in November. So change is underway. We cannot waste time because we have crucial county council and mayoral elections next year where we are defending some of the best results in our history, and we have to do well. Returning Conservative councillors is the public's surest defence against wasteful public spending and ever higher taxes. I have asked party headquarters to make available to any Conservative group council leader a detailed analysis of target voters in each ward or division to help local teams target their campaigning efforts. Because in 2025, we want each of you standing as Conservative candidates to know that the National Party will help you win, not hold you back. And guiding our efforts will be our next guest, the chair of Conservative Council Association, Councillor Phil Broadhead. Now, before he comes on, I just want to say what a great representative Phil is for our councillors in the party. He's hardworking, dedicated, and leads from the front, putting in the hard yards that are going to be needed over the coming months. And just to prove my point, in the 5 weeks in the run-up to conference, we've gained 8 council seats from our opponents in by-elections across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Phil.
Well, good afternoon, conference. Can I first just say what a real honour it is to be addressing you all today. It's been a roller coaster over 5 years for me as first deputy and then leader of the CCA and local government. In my time in these roles, I've worked with a handful of prime ministers and party leaders, 9 party chairmen, and Richard, let me tell you, they keep getting better with time, and scores of local government ministers and secretaries of state. Indeed, when I first took up the gig, no one had even heard of COVID, and Alipay was an app on my phone rather than the Labour Party motto. So much has changed in that time. But one thing that has stayed the same, firmly, in all of that time, is a resolute determination, resilience, and reliability of Conservative local government. Because during the pandemic, it was Conservative councillors and councils who were on the ground delivering for their residents and communities. Through the cost of living and inflationary environment, it was Conservative councillors and councils who found ever more innovative ways to protect the most vulnerable and balance the council books. And it was Conservative councillors and councils who, through all the nonsense and wranglings that were going on in Westminster, kept their heads down and kept doing the job. Now, as we've heard from the party chairman and others today, this year's election results were bitterly disappointing. But, colleagues, this is not new news to Conservative local government. We've been feeling this political pain for many years now, losing over 3,000 councillors, frankly as punishment, as our party lost the trust of many of our voters. But what does this actually mean? Well, it means that across the country, frankly, we've now got a bunch of fruitcakes running huge swathes of our public services and regions. Not because the public wanted them, but because they didn't want us. In my own neck of the woods, for example, outside of my national responsibilities, this time 18 months ago, I was leader of the council in Bournemouth. Now it's run by another unholy Rainbow Alliance who have scrapped our tourism department, implemented default 20-mile-per-hour speed limits across the city region, and have overseen a quadrupling of the number of rough sleepers since we were in charge. And it's been the wettest summer on record, which I'm pretty sure is the Lib Dems' fault as well, actually. So. Elsewhere around the country, we've got opposition councils going bust left, right and centre, 4-day working weeks and failed ventures galore. The only bright spot, a glimmer of hope for Oxford Council, as their enforced meat ban looks to be undone now that the new Prime Minister has pledged to return the sausages. But this has all been the price of losing councils and Conservative councillors. But conference, we are fighting back. A string of absolutely convincing by-election successes recently, as we've just heard from the party chairman, shows that while local government has borne the brunt of the political pain, It is us. We are the solution to the fight back. And let's take a look at some of these results. Three Rivers Council, Conservative gain from the Lib Dems with a 13% swing. You're supposed to cheer at this point. Redcar, gain from Labour with 19% swing. There they are. Gedling, gain from Labour with a 14% swing. Westminster, gain from Labour with a 10% swing. Worthing, Mid-Suffolk, Waverley, Denbighshire, gain, 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 gain. Now, I don't think this is just buyer's remorse. This is deeper. This is a wholesale realization that we are in deep trouble as a nation. But I also think it's more than that. I think it's a country finally waking up after a long nap to the value of Conservative representation. Because these results aren't just a reaction to the abysmal, hypocritical, incompetent Labour government that we're seeing. These results are real people on the ground voting positively for their local government Conservative champions. And guess what? We've been here all along. We've had too many deeply impressive colleagues lose their seats after working tirelessly for their communities. Conservative councillors delivering Conservative policies, delivering for their residents and losing. But no more. We are back. We're back to being judged on our record of success and promises of more. And yes, we're in opposition for the way in which we hold our opponents, both locally and nationally, to account. And a prime example of this, our highly coordinated and organised campaign against the withdrawal of the winter fuel allowance. Over 100 councils submitting our Conservative motion on the issue, along with bespoke graphics, press releases and content for every council. Conference, that is a modern Conservative fight back. Now, friends, there's much, much more to come as well as we tackle new issues head-on and work together to outsmart and out-campaign our rivals. Because, as I think these recent set of results show, I think our voters are ready to learn to trust us again. To trust the way we actually represent our constituents and regions, in contrast to the shambles of the Lib Dem, Green and Labour councillors who'd rather ban things and grandstand than take brave and positive decisions. To trust that we remember whose money it is we're spending, and trust that we will find solutions and not problems, because that's what Conservatives do. And that's why, over the next 5 years, well, heck, over the next 5 months as we prepare for these crucial local elections, it will be Conservative local government that will continue to turn the tide, to show that we can deliver, to show that we can lead, to show that we can be trusted, and to show that we can win. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil, and I promise you, Phil, that we will be with our Conservative local council and mayoral elections every step of the way to the 2025 elections. So let's talk about the rebuild. The Conservative Party has been the default choice of the British people for nearly 200 years. For more than 2/3 of the past century, the country has chosen the Conservative Party to lead. How did the Conservative Party earn that trust? We earned it because throughout our history, the Conservative Party has reflected the small c Conservative values held by the vast majority of our people. The Conservative Party as the party of responsible economic management. The Conservative Party as the party that understands the importance of self-reliance and of our individual responsibility to help one another. The Conservative Party as the party of the family and of the country, the only national party that keeps the union so close to our heart that we wrote it into our name. The Conservative Party that wants to conserve what is great about our environment, about our history and about our society, rather than sacrificing them to passing ideological whims. The Conservative Party that sees the value in each and every citizen and wants to create a future where everyone can reach their full potential based on their individual skills, the actions they take, the values they hold dear, and the qualities of their character. That's the Conservative Party that earns the trust of the people. We need, once again, to draw together the best and brightest Conservative thinkers into a concerted team effort to shape Conservative policies for modern Britain. The right approach, 50 years on. We must restore and promote a shared understanding of what it means to be Conservative in 21st century Britain. We need to reinvigorate Conservative thinking on our university campuses, organise and win back the battle of ideas from the left. I'm asking Lord Hannan, one of our best thinkers, to help lead the preparation of these plans. He's one of our best published authors and a Conservative with a comprehensive understanding of how the wide variety of Conservative views can be coordinated into a single, coherent Conservative vision. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lord Daniel Hannan.
This is the midnight. Let no star delude us. Dawn is very far. This is the tempest long foretold, slow to make head, but sure to hold. My friends, let's be in no doubt about the magnitude of the challenge we face. We aspire to be the national party. It's been our privilege to speak to and for the soul of the United Kingdom. And yet, in large parts of the nation, we have no parliamentary representation. In one election, we lost 2/3 of our MPs. We lost all of our red wall seats. We now have one Conservative in the whole of the North East. We don't have a single Conservative MP in Wales. Make no mistake about the scale of the challenge. And here's the paradox. Despite that huge electoral reverse, the worst we've had in the 200 years that the chairman was just talking about, since going back to Peel and to Pitt, never had fewer MPs than now. But despite that, there has not been a massive shift in the cultural values of the nation. I don't know of anyone who voted to change governments because they thought that taxes and spending were too low and needed to go up a bit. I don't know of anyone who voted for a change because they thought that prison sentencing was too lenient was too tough and needed to be made more lenient. I don't know of anyone who voted for that change because they believed that our border controls were too strict and that we needed more illegal immigration. So how is it that we have ended up losing the trust of the people? What was it that went wrong? Well, I put it to you that the real problem was one of implementation. I guess that all 4 of the leadership candidates, all 6 of the original candidates, would agree, as I think would everyone in this room, apart from maybe 1 or 2 of the journalists, I don't want to presume, but all of you who are Tory party members, that we want to have controlled borders, that we want to have lower taxes, we want to have strong families, we want to have patriotic values, that we want to have lower spending. We can all agree on those things, right? So why has it not happened? What went wrong? Hands up if you've been or are a local councillor. Yeah, quite a few of you, right? Cast your minds back to your first day, if you can, as a councillor. Right? Remember the gap between what you thought you were going to be able to do before you did it, and then when you arrived and found how circumscribed are the powers of the elected representative vis-à-vis the officer. Well, remember that day, and then multiply that to get to the scale of a Whitehall department. And then you will have some inkling, under our current system, of what it's like to be a minister, encased in an inert state machine, tugging at levers that have worked loose, stabbing furiously at buttons that are no longer connected. If we want to recover the confidence of our countrymen, it has to be by a program of change that we can deliver credibly. And in order to work out how to make those changes, we are going to need help. And that's why I want to applaud what our excellent new chairman is doing. Rather like after the defeat, go on, give him a round of applause while he's doing the job. Exactly. It's a horrible, thankless job being party chairman. I'd rank it just after being an association chairman, right? If you're very lucky, you get a light smattering of applause at the AGM when you stand down. So let's give him another round of applause while he's actually doing the job. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If we are going to effect these changes, we are going to need help and advice. Rather, as Winston Churchill, after our defeat at the end of the Second World War, reached out to different groups who were, if you like, who marched alongside us, although not under our colours, who shared our opposition to the nationalisation and the price controls then being enacted by the Attlee government, and who formed part of that coalition. So we need to reach out today to the people who have the ideas that will allow us to start on day one implementing a Conservative agenda. Yes, of course, our friends in the think tank movement, the CPS, the Adam Smith Institute, the Institute of Economic Affairs and Policy Exchange and all of the rest of them, God bless them all, but also people beyond the immediate penumbra of the centre-right, professional and regional and social groups that have expertise in their field and that have interesting things to tell us. We should be using our own party structures, of course, the CPF and so on, but we should be listening to advice from anyone who has expertise to bring to the table, including our friends overseas. There are Conservative and centre-right parties who are facing similar challenges to ours and who have succeeded magnificently. There are some terrific Conservative leaders in Europe. I was talking recently to the wonderful president of the Madrid region, Isabel Ayuso. She has held that seat in very difficult circumstances and increased her majority by pursuing a credible program of lower taxes, lower spending, and more freedom. I was talking again recently to the leader of our sister party in Canada, the extraordinary Pierre Poilievre, who has quadrupled party membership. They now have more than 600,000 members in the Canadian Tory party. Almost all of them attracted by that one leader and his policy of making it easier for young people to get onto the housing ladder and into the employment market. I saw the latest poll the day before yesterday among voters under the age of 35, right? The demographic of the Canadian Tory party 5 years ago was very similar to ours, but now, among voters under the age of 35, they have 47% support, massively ahead of all of the other Canadian parties. If it can happen there, it can happen here. But it's not going to happen on its own. We need to put our house in order. We need to reach out and get the best ideas. And we should be aware of quite how serious are the structural problems that we will face as we take office whenever that day eventually comes. There are huge problems that have gone unaddressed in this country and that this government shows no interest in acknowledging, let alone tackling. We have, for example, a deteriorating ratio of workers to pensioners. Basically stopped having babies around about 1971. That's not a great position for a country that wants to grow. We have the highest industrial energy costs in the developed world. We have a judicial system that is geared up always and everywhere to oppose deportation orders and thereby effectively to open our borders. We have a national debt that is now 100% of our GDP. And that's before you count student loans, before you count PFI debts, before you count public sector pension liabilities. We haven't built a nuclear power station since 1995. We haven't built a reservoir since 1992. The numbers of people using Heathrow Airport have flatlined since the year 2000. These are serious long-term challenges. We have not been able to screw shut the taps that we so wantonly spun open during the lockdowns. What was intended as emergency contingent spending is now being treated by all sides as permanent. These are not affordable things. And if we are to fulfill our mission as the national party the party that rises above sectional interest and delivers for the nation as a whole. We have to be prepared to tackle those problems. And that is why I am very honoured and very happy to be involved with Richard's initiative of reaching out and gathering the best minds to work alongside us. I don't know how many of you saw today in the nation's leading quality Sunday newspaper an article by our former parliamentary colleague David Johnston calling for a Conservative network. So the idea was to get people in professions and sectional groups who might not want to join the party or be formally associated with it, but who will promote centre-right values. Well, I was a little bit involved with the Leave campaign. I'm not going to talk about that because there will be a division of opinion in this room as everywhere else, but let me just say this. We had a model in Vote Leave of using precisely that section by section, group by group approach. We had doctors for Britain and lawyers for Britain and Muslims for Britain and fishermen for Britain and students for Britain, each able to bring a different constituency to the table. Maybe as a party, we should be looking at ways to move beyond, to add to our traditional geographical association structure and bring in people who up until now have been perhaps have balked at the final stage of joining the party, but who are natural allies in wanting a society based around freedom under the law. And that is our great task. Our great task going back not just the 200 years since our party took its first form under Pitt, but I would say going back all the way to the original Tory party in 1680. We have always been the movement that seeks to defend the interests of the nation as a whole. And that is the task in which I want all of us to join again. The work begins right away. For 350 years, we have been singing our song, speaking to and for the soul of this great nation. Our song is not yet sung. We're not done yet.
Thank you very much indeed, Lord Hannan. Let me turn to another part of our rebuild. In the past, people trusted us to lead because the Conservative Party was woven deeply into the fabric of our nation. Through countless connections to voluntary groups, to charities, councils, Conservative Party members kept in touch with the priorities of the people we sought to represent. Somehow, if we're honest, over the last 20 years or so, we have allowed our party in some important ways to become unstitched from our national fabric. In a changing country, we have missed opportunities to connect with all who share our conservative values and would like to join us to create a better society. Being a member of the Conservative Party is a signal that you believe in supporting democracy and that you believe in our country's potential. We need to build our membership, but we also need to strengthen their voice within our party. We need to understand and enable the multiple ways in which people feel affinity for our values. And we need to reach out more widely to groups that share our conservative values, but who do not yet see themselves as natural Conservative Party members. I have asked Penny Mordaunt to help shape our plans to expand and enhance membership of the Conservative Party. Penny has a varied and distinguished career of service to our country and our party, and a keen understanding of the values that make our country greater. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Right Honourable Penny Mordaunt.
Thank you, conference. I'm here to cheer you all up. In Britain, in the last few months, we have seen the smooth transition of power. Good wishes were sent by losers to victors. Constituents wrote thank you letters to their retiring MP. We had a King's Speech, steeped in the past to prepare us for the future. Elsewhere, the Royal Navy and their patrols intercepted 160 million quid's worth of cocaine. Our armed forces are continuing their training mission for the Ukrainians and are also preparing to help British nationals leave Lebanon. 13 million of us donated to charity. Hundreds set up a business. Farmers gathered the harvest. Rotarians helped vaccinate thousands of children against polio. Martin Lewis has been saving us all money by explaining the energy price cap to the nation. Well done, Martin. Team GB won 189 medals across both the Olympic and Paralympic Games. Well done, Team GB. The Princess Royal knighted the stoic and heroic Mr. Bates. The Prince of Wales appeared on Blue Peter to launch the Earthshot Prize, and the Princess of Wales cheered us all with her message of hope, especially those affected by cancer. It might be that our party is in the doldrums, but its values are vibrantly alive and on display every single day in every community across the UK, and the work and care of so many Brits around the world. What Britain stands for is what we stood for. We value courage, endeavour, enterprise, service and duty, creativity and discovery, competence and skill, grit, determination, kindness, tolerance and freedom, cheerfulness, honour, valour, graft, integrity, trust. It was our belief in those values that enabled our greatest deeds and victories, and not just those at the ballot box. The bad news is, it was the British people's belief in those values that removed us from government 3 months ago. But the good news is, it is the British people's belief in those values that is now causing them to feel a little bit iffy about their new Prime Minister. A chap who in a mere 12 weeks has brought doubt to our economy, fear to our elderly, a touch of the Imelda Marcos to the office of Prime Minister, and sausage memes to our timelines. Yep, they're right to be iffy about him. It's not Britain that needs to find its way back to us. We must find a way back to those we serve. The pragmatism and common sense of the British people. Their ambition that we remain an extraordinary nation. Back to those who understand responsibility, that choose to take it, that inspire it, and reward it. That's not just a task for a new leader. It's on all of us. We ourselves must take responsibility, and all of us are needed. All of you who are connected to those that we serve. The chairman has asked me to help us as a party reconnect with those that we serve and protect. Less than 0.5% of those that we seek to represent are members of our party. Less than 2% of the UK are members of any political party. So we will need the largest outreach programme any party has undertaken. And that is what I will prepare. And with your help, that is what we will do. To reconnect, to listen, to strengthen and broaden our foundations. Will you help? Will you help restore the soul of this party? To place Britain's values back at the heart of everything we do. To earn back trust, approval from the public, and perhaps even pride. For without that, no policy or personality will matter. Do this well. Then, when the nation goes looking for those in tune with its values again, we will be ready. We'll be worthy, and we will be back. Thank you, conference.
Thank you, Penny. You can imagine how much I'm looking forward to working with Penny on this initiative. But there are other priorities for change. Our party needs to understand and invest more in digital campaigning. Our candidates should know and take to heart the Nolan principles of public life. Our party's capacity for training and skills development can be better structured to a modern learning management system. And the Conservative Party must not shy away from our belief in enterprise. The Conservative Party should be at the vanguard of spreading the spirit of enterprise to a new generation. Now, we know a prosperous economy comes through the decisions of millions of our fellow citizens as they do their work, create new ideas, build innovative businesses, take a risk, earn a reward, and then reinvest their knowledge and capital to grow and improve. The Labour Party believe that a strong economy will come from the fortune-telling powers of the blessed Rachel, the patron saint of misery. But the truth is that Rachel Reeves is creating uncertainty that is harming growth, not helping. Will she approve new employment laws that could throttle small businesses? With Rachel Reeves, we don't know. Will she stop families passing on their home or their business or their farm to their children? With Rachel Reeves, we don't know. Will she hike taxes on pensions, on schools, and on wealth creators? With Rachel Reeves, we don't know. But here's what we do know. With Rachel Reeves, pensioners freeze. And now, conference, over to you. This conference is a shared endeavour, each of us contributing to the rebuild of our party. That's why I'd like to thank our President of the National Convention, Michael Winstanley, for all his work in ensuring that this conference is one of our largest and most member-driven conferences in recent times. Tomorrow, we have the return of member debates, the chance for the parliamentary party and our leadership candidates to hear your policy ideas on immigration and border security, on promoting free speech, building homes while protecting green spaces, and growing the economy. And then, at the centre of the conference are the many opportunities you will have to meet, to question, and to listen to the 4 candidates who are seeking to become leader of our party. On Monday and Tuesday afternoons, each candidate in turn will talk about their values, their background, and their motivation for being involved in public service. And then each will face your questions, delivered by our interviewer, to test their principles and their vision in key policy areas. And on Wednesday, each candidate will lay out their vision for the country. So there we are, conference. Optimistic, forward-looking, ambitious. Let's get going.
Please welcome to the stage Alex Burkhardt, Andrew R.T. Davies, and Russell Findlay.
Right. Hello, conference. Okay, come on. Hello, conference. Exactly. Well, look, thank you very much for coming in to hear our session on the union. I know that a lot of you have come to Birmingham this year to hear about the leadership. Well, I'm about to introduce someone who has just won the leadership of the Scottish Conservative Party. Thank you. Very decisive victory from Russell Findlay, who we're looking forward to hearing from in this session. On his left, but never on the far left, is Andrew R.T. from Wales, who is an absolute stalwart of the party, now on his second term as our leader in Wales, I think 3 years in, and there is nothing that he does not know about Welsh politics and Welsh Conservative politics. So we have an opportunity in this session, I think, to talk about how things fall after the general election, and also about how we can look forward to making the case for the union in this Parliament, even though we're in opposition in Westminster. Russell, I'm going to go straight to you. Huge congratulations on your victory.
Thank you.
As you take control of the Scottish Conservatives, what do you think the big challenges are for us in the course of the next couple of years?
So first of all, thank you very much, and thanks everyone for turning up today. It's an absolute privilege to be elected leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, and I look forward to working with whoever prevails at a UK level. The big challenges, we've just come through a pretty bruising general election. Now, not everyone in this room might know that 5 of the 6 Scottish Conservative MPs were retained and returned, which on the face of it is a pretty good result compared to the UK result. But that said, our vote share was extremely low, far too low, and as the new leader, I'm under no illusions about the fight we have. It's only 18 or so months until the next Holyrood election, and it's absolutely critical as new leader that we unite our team at Holyrood, but in every corner of the country, and come up with a sensible range of Conservative policies rooted in aspiration and ambition, and persuade the people of Scotland that we're on their side. Because frankly, we've had 25 years of devolution, and it's been different shades of socialism and hugely harmful to Scotland. And it's my job and our job to put that right.
Absolutely. And obviously we're in an interesting position in Scotland because finally the sheen has worn off the SNP. Goodness knows why they were allowed a sheen in the first place. But it seems that the scales are falling from people's eyes, and really their failure over the past, whatever it is now, decade or so, is manifest. I mean, how do you think we can best take advantage of that and make sure that we bring people back to conservatism?
Well, the time of the next election, the SNP will have been in power in Scotland for almost 2 decades, and in that time, every single public service has got worse. Scottish education used to be the envy of the world, and it's now in a terrible state. These people can't even build a couple of ferries. These 2 ferries are 7 years too late. They were originally going to cost £97 million, and the price tag so far is £400 million and rising. So we're going to end up with 2 ferries costing the best part of £500 million. Now, the reason that the SNP have been so strong and so dominant for so many years is down to the sort of snake oil of nationalism, whereby they always seek to blame someone else for their problems. And it's pathetic, and it has motivated me hugely as a firm believer in the union to get up and to do something about that, because the quiet majority in Scotland, and the majority do believe in the union, and not only did we have a decisive referendum result 10 years ago, as far as the SNP had it, the last general election was also a de facto referendum, and they went from, I can't remember exactly, 40 plus MPs to less than 10. So they've had their referendum. Now what we need to do, now that the independence threat is off the table, at least temporarily, is rebuild and show people that us as Conservatives are the right answer going into the 2026 election.
Absolutely. You've sort of seen the SNP take the Scottish people for granted, and now that's catching up with them. And Andrew, in Wales, we've obviously had 25 years of Labour government now, and we've seen the same sorts of failures coming out of that administration in terms of public services. Do you think that there's a chance that as we approach the Senate elections in 2026, that record of failure will start to catch up with them?
Well, I know there's been cutbacks in the conference budget this year, but these chairs are very small, I have to say. For someone who's travelled up the M5 today and had a McDonald's on the way, it's quite a tight and cosy fit, to say the least. I'm looking at the organisers at the front. Maybe some expansion of the chairs would go down well. But in all seriousness, 25 years of Labour has really held Wales back. And you'd expect me to say that at a conference floor in the Conservative Party conference. But the reality is, just look at the numbers. Whether it's the health service, where 1 in 4 people in Wales are on a waiting list. You know, they've had unbridled control in Wales of the health service, or the education system, or the economy. And when it comes to the PISA rankings on the education, sadly, we're propping up the league table rather than being at the summit of that league table. And when it comes to the economy, in other parts of the UK, workers are paid £3,100 more in other parts of the United Kingdom than they are in Wales. Imagine the difference that would make in everyone's wallets, purses and pockets if that could be spent in Wales, and what difference that would make to the economy of Wales. And that's Labour holding Wales back. They've had the reins of power, and that's why we've got to make the argument for change come 2026. And I believe the Welsh public are receptive for that change, and we're up to make that argument to them.
I'm absolutely sure you're right. Do you think that in Wales there is any sense of scepticism about devolution now?
Well, I think there's always scepticism of any government organisation or parliament. That's whether it's Westminster, Holyrood or the Senedd. But it is a fact that the Senedd, and by extension the Welsh Government, hasn't delivered the improvements that people thought were going to come in 1999, when we were told that we were going to get these improvements with devolution. And they've grown the national burden with Plaid Cymru in particular, holding the reins, because they very often held the Labour government in balance when the voting system gives them power which is beyond their representation at the ballot box. And what we've seen with the Labour Party is they're talking about another 36 more politicians in 2026 at a cost of £120 million. I know what most people want. They don't want more politicians. They actually want more nurses, teachers and doctors on the wards and the classrooms of the country. They do.
Absolutely. And presumably this policy of expanding the number of politicians, as you say, is pretty unpopular in Wales. I mean, why are they pushing ahead with it?
People in Wales haven't been asked about it, but they've got together as Lib Dems, Plaid Cymru and Labour to do this. And we're the only party that stood out against having this, and we'll continue to stand out about it right up until 2026 and beyond. Because Wales doesn't need more politicians. It's as simple as that. We don't need to spend £120 million on more politicians.
No, quite. And very, very good luck in making that case. I mean, what we saw in Wales and Scotland and in Northern Ireland at the general election was actually quite a strong vote for the union. Even in Northern Ireland, unionist parties did better than nationalist parties. And do you think that in Wales, the independence movement, such as it is starting to lose a bit of its momentum?
Well, we can never take anything for granted, but the union is well regarded in Wales because we see the benefits of being a strong part of that union. This isn't about a weak Wales within the union. This is about a strong Wales within the union, promoting the benefits of all four parts of the United Kingdom coming together as one entity. Now, the separatists would try and blow us apart, as they're trying to do in Scotland, as they're trying to do in Northern Ireland, as they're trying to do in Wales. But we're not going to allow that to happen. We're a proud unionist party, and we stand on our unionist credentials.
No, quite. And Russell, what do you think? Obviously, we're here. Backdrop of this conference is a leadership contest for leadership in Westminster. What would you like to see the next leader of the Conservative Party do for Scotland?
Yes, indeed. Well, I agree, first of all, with Andrew. We've got quite enough politicians, and I speak as a fairly new politician, and any plans to increase their number I would firmly oppose. But going into the UK leadership contest, we've got 4 terrific candidates. I've made the decision it's sensible for me not to say anything publicly about who I might or might not support. I think each of them understands, as you might expect, the importance of the union to all parts of this country, and I'm fully confident that whoever wins will understand the need to work closely with Andrew and myself and to ensure that all parts of the United Kingdom work well together and benefit from the union. Because going back to the economics, the most recent Scottish Government data shows that every man, woman and child in Scotland is better off to the tune of something in the region of £2,500 due to being part of the union. And the fact is, the SNP, they've never, ever since 2014, or before 2014, and certainly never since 2014, have they come up with the most basic of answers as to how the Scottish economy would function, what the currency would be, how pensions would be paid, because they don't have those answers. And it's demonstrably the case to anyone that has the least bit of knowledge that being in the union is beneficial to Scotland as it is to the rest of the UK.
Absolutely. I mean, the SNP have always really run away from that reality and that truth, and they've been very wary of analysis which would show what we all know, which is that it would be a disaster for Scotland's economy and also for the Scottish people.
Yeah, I understand why some people might be seduced by nationalism, that sort of easy option, if you like, the kind of slightly romantic idea of it all. But, you know, when you've got politicians in Edinburgh, highly paid politicians, using the power of the state to break up the state and knowing, as they must do, the damage that would inflict of the people of my country, that's why it's so vitally important that unionist politicians never cede ground to the separatists and never be complacent. For all that the SNP have had a terrible general election and Operation Branchform, the police investigation, continues, we cannot for a moment be complacent.
No, quite right.
And the important thing here, Alex, is that any nationalist party has not made that economic argument, whether it be in Wales, whether it be in Scotland or Northern Ireland. They will make the one argument about independence and this utopia, this mirage that they want to create to the voters. But the reality is, when it comes to the economics of it, all 4 parts of the union working together benefit from being one identity, one banner, one United Kingdom, sharing the resources of the union. And let's not forget, the union is the most successful union, socially, culturally and economically, that you will find anywhere in the modern world. And so instead of trying to dismantle that, we as unionists should make sure that we're fighting the union, the separatists, at any part of this country, whether that be in Scotland, whether that be in Wales or Northern Ireland, to hold us together, because the bonds that hold us together make us stronger together.
No, absolutely right.
Just yesterday was the 25th anniversary event of the opening of the Scottish Parliament, and it was an absolute privilege as the new leader to be introduced to His Majesty the King and to hear from him. And he spoke incredibly movingly, and he said that his late mother had come to Balmoral to see out her final days, and it was incredibly touching. And, you know, there wasn't anyone in that room who couldn't have felt moved about the power of his speech, which symbolised, I think, the power of our enduring union. And what also struck me when I looked around at the SNP benches, I saw and counted 22 empty seats. So that was at least 1 in 3 of them hadn't even bothered to turn up. You know, going into the 2014 referendum, Alex Salmons tried to pretend that nothing would change, that we would have the monarchy, we would have pound sterling. Now Alex Salmons has discovered that he's actually a rabid Republican under his new guise as leader of the Alba Party. But deep down within the nationalist movement, of course, is an anti-monarchy sentiment, and that, I think, was evident by the fact so few of them turned up in Parliament yesterday to show their respect.
Very disrespectful.
Yeah.
And they're most probably off in their camper vans, because SNP are firm in buying camper vans, don't they? They're campaign buses, aren't they?
Yeah, it's the only time, I think, a political party in the accounts, nobody could figure out what the £120,000 was, and it appears to have been a very high-end German camper van, which, if anyone's interested, if you keep an eye on the Police Scotland auction website, at some point it will presumably be disposed of. There might be a bargain to be had.
Jacuzzi included?
Well, I'm sure we can negotiate.
But going back to Alex Salmons, I mean, Alba had a very poor showing in the general election, didn't they?
Yes, I mean, they've got one MSP who defected from the SNP, and she was one of the leadership rivals of Humza Yousaf and Kate Forbes, and she came third, this particular individual. And her big idea during the SNP leadership contest was that there should be what she described as an independence thermometer in towns and cities in Scotland, and the citizens could walk past and see how high or low the temperature was for independence. But that's the kind of crackpot ideas we're used to, frankly.
It's like the Edstone. Remember that from 2015, where Ed Miliband was going to put the tombstone and Edstone in Downing Street Garden? Well, it ended up in a scrap heap, didn't it, or somewhere?
Yeah. And for all that we've had a bruising time of it, what people sometimes forget is the Scottish Conservative and Unionist Party went into the 2016 election at Holyrood and came back as the second largest party. We went into the 2021 election being written off and being told that, you've had your moment, and we came back as the second largest party, and Labour were nowhere. In this parliamentary term alone, Labour have voted with the SNP government more than 100 times. They backed gender self-ID, they backed the hate crime laws. There's really no difference between them politically other than nationalism. Labour are the SNP, but without the flags. That is why it's so critically important going into 2026 that a strong, robust, confident Conservative Party in Scotland can really take opportunity of that.
Absolutely. And Andrew, in Wales, and there was, I seem to remember a couple of years ago, there was talk from some Labour members that maybe the union had passed its sell-by date. Do you detect within the Labour Party in Wales sort of an increasing sort of sub-independence movement?
Well, there is that soft nationalist voice in the Welsh Labour Party. I mean, that's best emphasised and shown to the public by the former First Minister, Mark Drakeford, who would have been a soft nationalist. But what they fail to appreciate, and I go back to this point, and as a unionist, I don't think we can make this point enough, is the strength and power of the union to hold us together in a beneficial way that benefits some of the weakest and most underprivileged in our society by sharing the resources of the union. And then our businesses and our cultural links are strengthened by the bonds that link all 4 parts of the United Kingdom. But what we've always got to remember is that the weakness that has brought about the strength of the nationalists is ultimately the Labour Party in Wales, because they have always used them as their stick to try and prop their governments up and get budgets through. And so they've given more and more to the nationalists, who ultimately want to break up the United Kingdom. And if they carry on the current trajectory with more powers and more devolution, that ultimately will be their end goal. We have a proud tradition as a party that created a full legislative Welsh Parliament, a tax-raising Welsh Parliament, and an executive government form of administration in Wales. That's it. There is no need for any more. What we need to do is make sure as Welsh Conservatives that our manifesto talks about the people's priorities. And that's about getting to see a doctor, putting a roof over your head, getting a quality job that pays a decent take-home wage. And ultimately, if you've got kids, that child gets the best education possible so that their potential is realised, and ultimately they can open the doors to the ambition that everyone wants for their children.
Absolutely. And and do you think there's a chance, Labour obviously has this very large majority in Westminster, do you think there's a chance that we will see them play around with more devolution for devolution's sake? Do you think that that's something that might emerge during the course of a Starmer premiership?
Oh, I have no doubt about that. I mean, they set up the Constitutional Commission that looked into further lawmaking powers on criminal justice, for example, and there's been an argument time and time again that they want to see criminal justice in Cardiff Bay. The Gender Recognition Act that Nicola Sturgeon's government brought forward, the former First Minister and many of his ministers are on record as saying they'd like to see that in Wales. But yet the key bread and butter issues, such as the health service, the economy and education, they run a mile from when they're asked, what is your solution? What are your remedies for the problems you've inflicted on Wales? And I was talking to someone a little earlier out in the concourse, and they were saying about David T.C. Davis when he was Secretary of State, calling for that independent inquiry into Betsy Cadwaladr, which is the North Wales Health Board, about preventable deaths, because there have been numerous preventable deaths in that health board. And the people of North Wales, and I can see colleagues at the back there representing Gareth Davis from the Vale of Clwyd, who, by the way, just won a cracking council by-election, a ward that Labour had... A ward that Labour got 50% of the vote in 2022, and on Thursday night the Conservative candidate got the 50% and Labour got the 20% in that ward. So a great job, Gareth, to everyone in Vale of Clwyd, and that's what we've got to do, is talk the language that people want to hear, the people's priorities, and not constantly talk about the constitutional navel-gazing that Labour have used time and time again to deflect from their ability to deliver for people.
Do you think this is a reflection of public reaction against Labour's winter fuel payments policy? Do you think you're starting to see that on the doorstep?
Well, I can't think of many more crueler policies that an incoming government could administer as one of its first acts in government. To take away a benefit to 10 million people plus, who the government's own figures, the Labour Party's own figures in 2017 showed that there would be 4,000 premature deaths if that benefit was withdrawn. Could you imagine sitting in the Treasury and the civil servants provide you with the a la carte options of what you're going to take away? And actually, you look at the list and you think, the first people I'm going to give a kick into are pensioners, because that's what Labour did. And when you look in Wales, that's withdrawing £110 million worth of payments into Welsh pensioners' pockets that will see 400,000 households deprived of being able to make that decision to switch the heating on. And yet you see the Prime Minister walking around with a Louis Vuitton suit on or the flashy glasses on. I mean, at the end of the day, they're quite right to talk about people's priorities. His priorities is the Louis Vuitton suit. My priorities and the Conservatives is to make sure pensioners can keep their houses warm this winter. And it was in our manifesto to keep that benefit, and we would have kept it. And that's one of the deficits of not having Welsh MPs in Westminster, that sadly Welsh pensioners will not have the winter fuel payment this year.
No, quite right.
Going back to the point about Mark Drakeford, it was evident from sitting in the Parliament that Nicola Sturgeon and he got on very, very well, didn't they? And we see this in the Scottish Labour Party. There's a former Scottish Labour leader who just recently produced a paper demanding that the Scottish Parliament have the power to call for an independence referendum. You've got people, senior figures in the Scottish Labour Party in Holyrood who don't, I believe, truly believe in the union, and are so weak they would do anything to facilitate the SNP, and haven't learned the lessons, as you know, we've seen in Wales, where you give the nationalists an inch and they'll take a mile, and of course always find someone else to blame. I can't begin to imagine the headlines and the wall-to-wall coverage there would have been if a UK Conservative government had arbitrarily snatched tens of millions of winter fuel payments, lifeline payments to people across the UK, and even more so perhaps in certain parts of the north of Scotland where winters are even more harsh and unforgiving. It's absolutely despicable.
It is, and we have an opportunity over the course of the next couple of years to remind voters in Scotland and Wales that this is what Labour in power does, and to present a meaningful alternative, which I know that both of you will be able to do. I think that we've got, in terms of thinking about how we can behave in opposition, what do you think we all need to be doing in Westminster, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, despite the fact we're not in power, to make the case for the union? Is it that we should, as you suggest, Andrew, we really just focus on the priorities of ordinary working people, and we say that this is what the union stands to uphold? Or do you think that we need to continue to make a broader case as well, that this is something that touches not just on economics, but on who we are?
Yeah, I mean, I do think while the SNP are in a terrible state and don't look like they're going to improve their lot anytime soon, we cannot be complacent. Polling still shows quite a significant number of people in Scotland do believe that breaking up the United Kingdom is the right thing to do. There is, of course, the fundamental economic argument, but I'm also of the view that we are one family of nations, and that those bonds that each and every one of us probably have to varying degrees, we've all got relatives and friends and families in different parts of the UK, that is absolutely critical. You know, I don't want to spend my time as a politician only talking about the union. You know, the Scottish Conservative Party rightly stood up against the SNP year after year, and to great effect and to our benefit electorally. But now going forward, we need to put that to one side and talk about the issues that matter to people. Talk about education, talk about housing, talk about the economy, and show people that after 25 years of this failed socialist consensus at Holyrood, that a Conservative future is in the best interests of Scotland.
I mean, one of the interesting things that we're seeing emerging in Northern Irish politics at the moment is, we saw it at the Sinn Féin's conference the other day, and also an announcement by Leo Varadkar that there is a much more public push for a border poll than we've seen in some time. And this is obviously the nationalist parties, the nationalist movement, thinking that Labour might be a soft touch. It's going to be, and the truth is that Labour is much more nervous of being an open advocate for the union with Northern Ireland. And I can see that it's going to be our job to be the voice box and be the champion of the four home nations, Northern Ireland being part of that. Because as you've both said, if we give the separatists an inch, they will take a mile. So I think that there are very the cheerleading aspect must not be neglected by us. I know that it won't be.
It's also very important that we offer an alternative and a vision of hope for the future. And whether it's that ability to show a way forward on building houses so people can get a roof over their heads, getting the education system, and speaking in a Welsh context, so it gives that decent education that unlocks the potential. What we saw with Michael Gove's reforms around reading, for example, in English schools, has propelled the English schools to the top of the rankings when it comes to reading. Sadly, in Wales, after 27 years of Labour, we've got some of the worst outcomes on reading in particular. ITV, for example, did a fantastic expose on this last week, showing that the number of pupils leaving primary school and going into secondary school unable to read. And then the simple fact about being able to get that GP appointment in the morning or getting that operation. I mean, you don't go to the GP because it's a fun experience. You go to the GP because there's something wrong with you. And if we can empower people to have that ability to get on with their lives, and people naturally look to us to do that, then we will become their natural party and their natural home. And the one thing that stands out to me about politicians making decisions in Wales that is alien to what the people of Wales want was the speed limit of 20 mph across the length and breadth of Wales, where a petition of 500,000 individuals, unheard of in the Senate's history, signed up to say, we believe that there should be outside schools, hospitals and care homes sensitive sites. But this national speed limit is devastating for the economy. By their own figures, £9 billion taken out of the economy, and ultimately will not bring those casualty rates down, which we all want to see, and it will be a devastating blow across Wales. And it really did focus people's imagination and thought as to where these decisions have been taken for the first time in many instances. And come 2026, we need to make sure people know that it was only the Welsh Conservatives stood out to stop that happening. Plaid, the Liberals and Labour voted to enforce it and drive it through, excuse the pun.
The biggest surprise about the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in Wales is the SNP haven't gone for a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit in Scotland, because anything you can do, they can do worse. But I think it's an example, actually, of the disconnect between both the parliaments in Cardiff and Edinburgh, the elitist, socialist, we know best mindset of those politicians and the people they're supposed to represent. And that's why sensible, conservative, moderate voices should prevail about standing up to them, whether it be the ludicrous speed limits or whether it be gender self-ID that results in male rapists ending up in female prisons.
Quite. Well, on that, it was a very important victory for the Conservatives in the last Parliament, where we did manage to stand up to the SNP in Holyrood and make sure that ridiculous law was not put into effect.
Yeah, the lobbying group LGBT Alliance is in the conference just now, and they've got a sign up that says women's rights are not a culture war, and that's absolutely the case. This is now being presented as being the sort of wicked Tories opposing progressive politics, but there's nothing progressive about trashing women's rights by allowing anyone from the age of 16 and upwards without any form of medical diagnosis to declare they're the opposite sex to which they were born, and for the state to back that up, and for anyone to say otherwise to be committing a criminal act. And in fact, one of the greatest recent triumphs of the UK Conservative government was when Alistair Jack, the former Scottish Secretary at the time, and Rishi Sunak had the bravery to oppose the legislation that was passed in Edinburgh, despite the best efforts of the Scottish Conservative Party. And they said no, because it would have impacted on UK-wide equality law. And where the SNP did their usual grievance, big bad Westminster is now dictating and disrespecting Scottish democracy, the people of Scotland were on the side of the UK Conservative government. They fully supported that bloc, and long may it continue.
Yeah, quite. It was very, very good work by Alistair Jack and Kemi Badenoch, and he was the Equalities Minister at the time. It was, and I saw similar case when I was in the Cabinet Office in the last Parliament. Yeah, we brought in the Procurement Act. And the Procurement Act was a huge piece of post-Brexit legislation. For the first time in over 40 years, we were able to sweep away some extremely cumbersome and unbusiness-friendly regulations and replace them with state-of-the-art improvements. And pleased to say that Wales signed up and the Scottish Government didn't, because it was an initiative of Westminster. And so all of the advantages that we're now granting to small and medium-sized enterprises, making it easier for them to get big government contracts, making it easier for them to be involved in public procurement, none of those benefits will go to businesses in Scotland. And we have to be the people who are reminding voters in Scotland that it's the SNP that turns down these opportunities, turns down the opportunities of being part of the union?
Well, outside the Scottish Parliament building on the flagpoles still flies the EU flag. They cannot accept that it's over, that we're out. But even now they're aligning themselves at every turn to EU regulation where they can, under the pretence that Scotland will leave the UK and somehow miraculously join the European Union. It's an absolute folly.
Yeah, quite right. Well, gentlemen, we're very nearly out of time. Andrew, do you have any final thoughts for this conference? What are you hoping to hear whilst you're here?
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing the 4 candidates who are standing for leader. And I think it's really important that as a party, we recognise and we feel that pain that July the 4th into July the 5th delivered for us. And we all feel what it did to us in our guts. Because we are a party that should be giving the country that conservative voice, that centre-right voice. And sadly, people felt that they couldn't give us that vote this time round. We must never, ever allow that to happen again as a party, because people are counting on us and people trust us to deliver and empower them to get on in life. And that's what I want this conference to be about, review and rebuild. And so that we're fit for purpose come 2026, when we face the Welsh electorate for the Welsh parliamentary elections, and we're fit for purpose for the general election and the local elections in 2029 and 2027 in Wales. And we give people that voice and that hope and that passion that they could see and should see every time as Conservatives when we stand on a ballot.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And that's right, isn't it, Russell? It's all to play for. We may have suffered a historic defeat, but this lot are making a complete pig's breakfast of the whole thing.
Yep.
And this is our chance to regroup and move forward together.
That stirring moment there almost made me want to move to Wales.
There's quite a few people want me to move out to Wales.
Yeah. As long as you drive slowly. Yeah. No, it's... what was the question? Sorry.
It's all to play for, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, 2026, the SNP are in a very bad way. I do worry slightly that such is the gross incompetence of the UK Labour government, that will be to the SNP's benefit. You know, we've already seen polling suggesting that the winter fuel payment issue alone is causing people who voted Labour in Scotland to have second thoughts about that. So all we can continue to do is fight for conservative values, come up with sensible, credible Conservative policies that show people that we're on their side. And of course, we'll always be unionists. That's in our name, it's in our DNA. But we also have to remind people why we're Conservatives and why our values align so often with those of mainstream Scotland.
Well, Andrew, Russell, thank you ever so much for joining me today to talk about the union. I hope you have a wonderful time at conference. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure.